is Dr. Carl Farinelli. I'm going to briefly talk about leadership styles. And I'm going to base it on two of the classic models that still are mentioned a lot. The old Kurt Lewin model from 1939 kind of was the beginning of all of this. And he gave us three styles: laissez-faire, autocratic, and democratic. And laissez-faire is the kind of person that says, don't fix that which isn't broken. Let's wait until there's a crisis before we intervene. Let's do, if things are working well, let's just leave things alone. And sometimes in a severe laissez-faire case, even when things aren't working so well, they will leave them alone. They don't want to make problems until it gets to be a crisis. And so this is the one that I compare to the person who ignores the oil light on their engine until the engine finally burns up, and then they add oil. And so laissez-faire can be a very good person in really great times, when things really are running smoothly and there are no problems, and you don't want to be having committee meetings just to have committee meetings. Then laissez-faire can be a good leadership style. But if you listen to your teachers and listen to your parents, listen to students and all of your stakeholders, and you see indications of problems, even just little bitty indications, then you might want to do some problem solving way before those things become a crisis. Especially on something like in public relations, where I have you do a crisis plan. You don't want to wait until after there has been a shooting or a stabbing to then come up with a committee and decide how to react if a problem like that occurs, or if there is a rumor of something like that happening. You want to look out before those things happen. So laissez-faire is sometimes good in some situations, but sometimes not so good in other situations. The autocratic, or later in 1970, what Owens would refer to as authoritarian, this would be the person who makes all the decisions on her or his own. Some people might refer to it as a big bad boss, or an autocrat, or a control freak is another term I've heard used for this. You know, if you have an authoritarian, I think it was Plato that said that a benevolent dictator is actually the most efficient form of leader. And so if you have a leader that you are friends with and you like them and you love the way they do things, there's a lot of things you want a person to be authoritarian about. If a person comes onto your campus, an unfriendly visitor, you don't want your principal to call a committee meeting to decide what to do. You want that person to step in and deal with that immediately. If you have a child stepping in front of a school bus, you don't want people to say, what should I do? I mean, they have to make a kind of an autocratic decision, be it right or wrong. So there are cases, especially in crises or when there's not time to get input, when you want a good autocrat, or you need to be a good autocrat. You have somebody who's doing something inappropriate, and I've had a few of those cases that I won't discuss here, but if you have where you have somebody doing something really inappropriate with children, you have to be able to go and look at that person in the eyes and say, you're going to come to my office right now and we're going to deal with this. And you need to get those people away from kids if you know that they're doing something inappropriate. So there is a time for being authoritarian, for being an autocrat. But usually, if you are always telling people it's my way or the highway, you got to do things my way, if you're always being the big bad boss, then you're often not getting the trust from people to tell you about problems way before they occur, and to confide in you some of the things that you could deal with ahead of time. So if you use time wisely, then you can use this democratic or participatory participating style of leadership. But you really have to know how to use time wisely, and you have to have a good, efficient method set up to do it. The bureaucratic, this one is good for things for which there are already methods of doing things. There are rules or laws. For example, if you have a child in a class that there is reason to suspect that that person is being bullied or abused, either on campus or at home, there should be a set of guidelines of exactly how to deal with that by the law. And so you want to go by the book if it's in the book, basically. If there is a good rule already at your school, or if there's a good law to go by in the community or at the state level or even federal level, then it pays to be a bureaucratic leader. But sometimes there may not be a rule, or sometimes a rule might not apply. And so, there's been cases where a child brought obviously a play weapon to school, something that was obviously a toy, and they treated that just like a regular weapon. You have to say, do you want to go by the book on something like that, or do you want to use common sense? So, bureaucratic is good in some cases, and in some other cases, it's better to use common sense or the democratic method. Charismatic is meaning that you are friendly and you treat people in a friendly way, but there is a negative and a positive form of this too. If you smile in people's faces, but you are unfriendly to them behind their backs, if you are using a false charisma in the way of trying to convince people to do something or manipulate people, that's not good. But all of these others should be charismatic in a genuine way. So I think they overlap in many cases. So I would hope that you would look at all of these, and I think I discussed them. Did we go over them all? I think that you would want to look at each of these and say, how do I use the tools of an authoritarian leader, and when are they needed? How do I use good democratic leadership when time allows, and it is a decision for which there isn't already rules to apply or steps that have to be followed? When do I just leave things alone and let them go on without my interference? When do I have to go by the book or go by the rule of law? And when can I be friendly and congenial, and when do I need to be stern? So these are all a lot of things that you'll develop. You'll look at your mentors, you'll use your common sense, but I did want to go over these 5 with you, and hopefully, do these make a little more sense now?
Yes.
Okay, well then we'll post this for everybody in class to see, and I hope this will help you.
Thank you.